Hello, and welcome to uh, a presentation on myopia. Happy New Year. Uh, this will be the uh, so this presentation is divided into uh, okay. This presentation is divided into three sections: summary, myopia from Rome, and tough debates. So this is the presentation structure. Distance, uh, just like the physical space has distance, I would argue that the mind's space has distance as well. Um, just like objects and concepts uh, are visible to us that's near, so do they proceed to gradually disappear as we look towards the horizon, look further. So, why does this have, why does this matter? Um, well, this framework can be applied to uh, myopia. Um, and the term mind myopia is uh, is uh, is based on this mind's version of distance. Um, Crisis of psychological myopia. Uh, we, I would argue that currently, because of this framework, we're undergoing a crisis of psychological myopia. Uh, Let me check. Hang on. Testing, testing, testing. Okay. Uh, so 80% of us are living paycheck to paycheck. 33% of us has saved $0 for retirement. Uh, the average American reads at an 8th grade level. 20% of Americans read for leisure. Book media sells at 1/10 the rate of movies. Uh, R and PG-13 genres are the primary genres in films, and the drug addiction crisis is at an all-time high. I think uh, so. Here's a Nature article about the myopia boom. It talks about how I think it was 85% of East Asian um, teenagers have this uh, wears glasses, and I would argue that um, uh, just like uh, our disease with the our eyes have a disease that needs glasses. Our mind's eye also has this disease that needs glasses. So, so here is the framework. Um, Here is the attentional framework. Uh, this is a framework that uh, could be used to analyze this uh, myopia, and also it could be used to analyze other things. So here here is the Fortnite, the beer, the PG-13. Uh, we start by consuming this layer, and afterwards we consume the wine, the R movies, and still not satisfied, we dip lower down each tier. I would argue at the center of this thing is like race car driving and just other really intense experiences. Uh, the deeper it goes, the more chance of psychological problems, and particularly with the games today, where it's getting a lot more realistic as you play more of these intense games. If you just uh, go on YouTube and search for these titles, they're very graphic and yeah, they're most like it's not good for the person basically. So vortex of higher bandwidth, ever more interrelated presentism, individual quadrants, social fabric. So, so as we dip down towards the center of the it, uh, it is more pleasurable, but it gets it gets more problematic as we progress. So, ever growing presentism due to digitization, due to roboticization, and the end of work. Um, this is not an argument against technology, but this is a, this is um pointing out some a potential error with technology, and I think uh with uh analysis we can work around this. So time plasticity. So if we combine neuroplasticity with the addiction framework, we we obtain uh, this normal years versus plastic years. A person lives 100 normal years, but in terms of plastic years, um, uh, a person who's on the baseline line might live 100 plastic years, but a person the as a daredevil race car driver lives about 1,000 psychological years, plastic years. So boredom's effect on our time perception. Uh, boredom uh, makes later boredom exciting, excitement. But this aspect is a Faustian bargain because as you dip down lower in the edge, you're making later experiences uh, speed up. So, so what 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 is interesting is that at the both of the extremes, you're basically getting the same thing. And I would argue that boredom is the way to go because boredom is open to all and and is is the healthier of the two extremes. Um, so hypothetical effects of short-termism. As we dip down lower and lower into the end, we become more and more short-term because the we are viewing everything from the the shorter distance. Okay, so hypothetical effects increase consumption, and we can see this most clearly from drug addicts and their behavior. In uh, lawlessness, increased consumption, increased orientation towards polarization, less patience, unable to read, unable to accept boredom, unable to accept slow and complex arguments. So, so yeah, more debatable effects. I wouldn't sort of, but some of these more debatable effects are real. Uh, the essence of the presentation is pensiveness. I would argue as we get away from the boredom and more towards the end, where we're we're getting away from the pensiveness, the capacity to contemplate without distractions, prolonged single stream of thought, pleasure and presentism. So presentism itself is a pleasure, and also presentism from pleasure. Uh, Rami's hooks that impale gradually, the psychological effects of heroin, own pose and anchors a person more towards the present. Okay, so okay, I think okay. So one of this the contributors of presentism is this uh, one of the contributors of presentism is the incessant growth of um of the screen size. So previously in the 50s and 60s we have a 25% field of view. Now we're progressing towards uh, glasses that off, offers an 100% field of view. And eventually we'll get to these $1 glasses hosted on the cloud that has 100% field of view for $1. So everybody would have them. This is beneficial in some aspects, but it also contributes to the presentism and the short termism and the myopia, the inability to see the future. So if we analyze um, uh, the 25% band field of view bandwidth as 10 kilobytes per second, the 100% field of view we can analyze to 80 kilobytes per second in terms of bandwidth. The nightclub experience we can probably estimate to be 200 kilobytes, and the uh, direct brain implant we can analyze to be uh, uh, 1000 kilobytes. Okay. Uh, so let's consider this idea in the opposite side. Low bandwidth pensiveness um, is about 20 kilobytes a second. Boring mind wandering is maybe 10 kilobytes per second. Yoga and effort in action maybe is 1 kilobytes per second. So one of the things that's uh, a large driver of presentism is this is currently is gaming. I think um, a person put the current number at 4 billion of the planet's inhabitants play games. Uh, so so this uh, this uh, is is I will tie this to the attention economy uh, as we go towards Rome. Uh, we progress in the presentation towards Rome. So, so the I will so so this current situation has happened before. Um, uh, this current situation has happened before. During uh, due to the large influx of labor from the Eastern and Gallic Wars, um, a large portion of Roman laborers are put out of work. So the problem becomes how to sustain the attention of so many workers who are out of work. So in terms of resource efficiency, uh, the policymakers needed needed some uh, channel to increase to sort of sustain the attention of the workers. So in terms of resource efficiency, a coliseum slash wrestling stadium would sustain would be less costly than an opera house. It will sustain the attention for more people, and it would cost much less. Also, there are in addition, unscrupulous Caesar gave in to temptation and enlarged the games, not for resource efficiency, but for self aggrandizement. Um, the third thing is that, um, in addition to these two sort of forces, uh, Caesar was uninterested in gladiators and did not participate much in the games, but Augustus and Commodus had to be interested in gladiators. Uh, the so this illustrates the vortex relationship between uh, the society and the policymakers, and it becomes this passive force that acquires a life and momentum of its own, just like this article from the NY Books. Um, it it acquires a life of its own, and um, yeah. So, and this leads to a much needed uh, study of the attention economy. It may mean a lot of things, but it is it, it grows when when there is less physical work around. So we need to study this and analyze this more, and and really figure out um really figure out what the proper policy is, how much of it is necessary, and also, um, just like uh, the government regulates um, some of the more dangerous things, dangerous products on the market, I would argue that uh, some some regulation is required for the attention economy, because right now the laissez-faire system has some errors. So so in terms of the attention economy, we are ever increasing bandwidth and lowering bandwidth for that. In Rome, previously, um, much of the entertainment was public baths, and but then it, it sort of developed into uh, mostly the heavy stuff like colosseums and chariot racing. And especially of pressing concern is the the VR aspect, because eventually everything will be VR. Because uh, if we make a couple of key innovations in the next 50 years, the $1 cloud based glasses will be everywhere. And especially the games, because um, it affects the next generation, the next generation of citizens and policymakers and voters. So, one aspect of the attention economy is that this breathing aspect. If we're There is a larger and larger sort of incentive as the attention economy grows, uh, to sort of to sort of uh, to not allow your consumers to breathe. and and that may be good for uh, the producer, but it's not good for the consumer. Okay. In terms of occupation, uh, from personal experience, intense video game hours, I played a lot of games, and some of the intense video game makes hours seem like minutes. So, so, so have friends who do nothing but play games. No kids, few friends, no socialization. So it's like we're adding a bottom layer of Maslow's pyramid in terms of self-actualization. Um, there's this Indian parable from uh, that that mentions the lota of water that mentions the lota of water. We are all sent to Earth to get a lota of water, and I don't think that this lota of water um, comes entirely from this intense video game experience. It's 100% occupation, the lota of waters that we're all stuck with. So we can quantify this myopia. Um, yeah, uh, eye trackers and eye tracking heat maps. Uh, as you can see from this video, uh, okay, well that video is unavailable, but you can you can see from this video, it's it tracks your eyes and yeah. So curing mental myopia, is there a cure for it, like eyeglasses and LASIK? Uh, if we can measure and quantify it, then we can understand and remedy this. Uh, we can we can pinpoint dangerous myopic levels of a person, and we can pinpoint target changes. Although this sounds big brothery, uh, it might be necessary. I'm not sure. Uh, so so it's it's easy to uh, sort of exaggerate or sort of over argue this uh, framework and this issue. Some of the tough debates are the healthy amount of busyness for policymakers, the healthy amount of youth presentism, and the Star Trek to Star Wars content direction. Uh, empty space to step back and look at the big picture. Uh, so the exponential acceleration of the world's problems require pensive analysis. A full schedule might not uh, be uh, be enough to analyze it pensively. And there's also this idea that if all of your friends watch a 50-inch TV for 8 hours a day, it's difficult to not do the same. So I would like to share with you uh, a, a, a story. Um, this is from one of the first-hand accounts. Uh, one of the books. I think it was the Everyday Lincoln, but I'm not sure. But one of the books that has a lot of the quotes by Lincoln. No, a lot of the you know uh, books. A, a lot of the first-hand primary source accounts of Lincoln. And so this lawyer friend of Lincoln, when he was a frontier lawyer, would sort of, at the end of the day, he saw, as he was sort of going up the hotel room, he saw Lincoln at the fireplace, staring at the fireplace, doing nothing else but staring at the fireplace. What's interesting is that when 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 he when he um, left the hotel room in the morning, got a good night's sleep, he came down the stairs and found Lincoln still there. He, he been there the whole night, just staring at the fireplace. So, but and he phrased it very poetically. Uh, you'll have to read a first-hand account. But um, so so a lot of the Lincoln's speeches, especially earlier speeches like the Lyceum speech, is a product of days and days of sustained thought. Days and days where Lincoln is just doing this, staring at the fireplace. So this is a moment that defines Lincoln to himself and others, to Lincoln and others. Um, so a lot of the so there's another moment during the uh, very strenuous portion of the Civil War where the North was losing all of the battles. And Lincoln would also, there was a quote, uh, he, he wrote that his hands and feet are constantly cold. And both from the pictures, you can see he spent a lot of sleepless nights. And but the the uh so 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 the insomnia, uh he wasn't doing anything during the nights. He was just doing what he was doing previously as a frontier lawyer. He was just being pensive, staring into the fireplace, being pensive. So so one of the suggestions uh is that uh more analysts can be pensive as well. Um, long long-term, narrowly focused thinkers to complement, support, and debate the policies of the doers. Uh, you know, much needed, and this is much needed to due to the great acceleration. Uh, due to this great acceleration. Um, so the youth needs some part of this presentism, but how much is too much is uh, an area where uh, because this problem is is new and there's not much scientific study that can coherently analyze it. It's it's been unaddressed up until now, and uh, some of the uh, problems like the the drug addiction crisis, the sort of uncompetitive educational crisis stem from this aspect. But there's also the argument that studying increases presentism as well. Complexity increases presentism. So I'm not sure where that would fit into this equation. But yeah. Um so the last uh tough debate is the Star Trek to Star Wars content direction. Um People, they love blood, they love action, not this talky, depressing philosophy. Uh, this idea, this tough debate is encapsulated in the film Birdman, and it progresses, it mainly uh, is how is about how the progression of shows, books about ideas to shows about action and blood. It's a difficult debate, and it's easy to polarize and argue incorrectly. But the growing demand for whiskeys and NC-17 content is a problem. So horror elements break through to the mainstream. House of Cards, Sopranos, Game of Thrones. Things that would at one time affect revulsion now affects interest. And it's an endless vortex of blood. So, so there's an endless market demand for the next tier, for edgier content, edgier than the present content. So it makes the current content unsatisfactory. And because it's a plastic content industry, there are no physical limitations. Uh, the neuroplasticity can alter all the way down. Say. So this is is uh, film ratings over time. Uh, we had a lot of G and PG movies, but now it's mostly R and PG-13 movies because that's what the market is demanding, and eventually it will demand uh, the next tier as well. So the relentless upgrading of gory films. Total Recall is at 1990. Ebert noted that there's a lot of action and violence in this movie, but if you compare it to Gladiator, it's not that much violent. It's not that violent, and Logan in 2017 is much more violent than Gladiator. These films are all mainstream horror movies that are seen by uh, a, a lot of the audience. It's not a niche movie. Um, so can we apply the scientific method to quantify this transition as well? Uh, so one of the aspects is that um, action games is a lot worse than action movies. It it's sustained longer. Uh, there's there's no fixed end to the action games. You can just keep playing the games over and over again, and you can play the games until you're tired, and then play more games. That period where you play more games is even more damaging. So there is that aspect as well. So tangents, uh, we can analyze this climate change tangent uh, uh, to this uh, due to increased production and consumption due to short-termism. Denialism is easier when you can only see 24 hours into the future. When you are stuck at the lower portion of Maslow's pyramid and you cannot aspire to anything more. Um, Economic value of sustaining attention. The entire market is currently large. The attention economy is currently large and it will grow. Uh, yeah, we, we need to we need more studies on this attention economy. We need more rigorous studies, more innovative studies on the attention economy because it it uh, uh, it impacts a lot of things. The growth of the attention economy impacts a lot of things. Uh, the identity crisis, the polarization of politics is also a tangent because as we're upgrading the gory films, we are also deepening our connection to the primordial id. We are um, polarizing sound, growing the polarization sound bites, uh, conflict orientation, and tribalism. So there is a idea that an uh, economic idea that the bad currency drives out the good currency. So we are this tough debate analyzes how the loud drives out the quiet. Is this period that we're undergoing the end of boredom, quiet thought, pensiveness, the end of reading as not only as a pleasure but as a means of interacting with the world, understanding the world. So, at a time where there is increased demand for knowledge workers, for quiet, we are also paradoxically um, uh, sort of shrinking our supply. So, and this this sort of trend is especially pressing because the loud is driving out the quiet most intensely in our youth. If you go look at the box office numbers and you go look at some of the streaming sites, it's it's all FPS and action. So this is a trend in film genres. So uh, this is a graph of film genres. Previously, it was all documentaries and all drama, but now it becomes all action and all anime. So, due to this acceleration, we can we can see this loud driving out the quiet in a dramatic way. So, are we at an inflection point where we're on the Titanic and there's this iceberg that we do not see? There's this surface level iceberg, but a much deeper iceberg that we do not see. Uh, this is not meant to sound alarmist because we are we still have some time before VR and the the uh $1 glasses. Um, so can we decide something with regards to this as as a people? Because uh this this uh where almost everybody has the attention span of a drug addict. So how do we turn the tide back towards dramas and documentaries? Or how do we at least balance out some of the extremes? Uh, how do we uh, re-educate, uh, especially our youth, to add some degree of Lincoln's pensiveness, add some degree of Lincoln's pensiveness, because we still, while we still have time, this is a critical juncture. Uh, uh, Thank you very much, and I will be updating this presentation every um e- every couple of months, and and I, I encourage you to make your own presentation about this mind myopia and and share it uh, with your friends. Uh, uh, Thank you very much, and have a good uh, day.